Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. So this video is a little late. I wanted to get it filmed last Sunday, but I didn't because after Thanksgiving everything was just crazy. Trying to get things done before December arrived, which is today is December 1st. As you can see, I have on my Christmas t-shirt. So I feel a little bit better about Christmas. But this video is going to be my November wrap-up where I read 4 ebooks and about 13 or 15 physical books. So in total, I read 19 or 20 books altogether. So I'm going to show you guys what books I did read this month and what my ratings were and what my thoughts were. So the first one that I read was Ella Enchanted. It was an ebook by Gail Carson Levin, I think it was. I rated that 5 stars. I have seen the movie several times, so I really wanted to read the book because I wasn't sure if it was exactly like the movie was. I ended up rating it 5 stars. It was exactly as I remembered the movie. So I was really excited about that. I was like, yes, finally a book I've read that matches the movie adaptation, because it's really hard for authors and for producers to do that when it comes to adapting a novel. So I will be continuing that series, probably not till next month, January, because December will be mostly Christmas winter books that I'll be reading. The next one that I read, which was another ebook, was Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I have read 3 other Jane Austen books, but I have not read this one by her, and so I was really anxious to read it because one of my cousins read it a few months ago and she was asking me if I read it, and I said I didn't, and she really wanted me to read it, so I finally read it. I really loved it. I really connected with the main character and how she was feeling after she suffered a loss of her father. So I could really relate to that, and I think that's mainly why I rated it 5 stars, because when you can connect with a book, like, that's just everything. It makes you feel better about the book you're reading. It makes you feel like, okay, I'm really enjoying this book. I really like this author. So I rated that 5 stars and I really enjoyed it, and I hope to read more by Jane Austen in the coming months. The next one I read, which was book 2 in the A Cour series by Sarah J. Maas, was A Court of Mist and Fury. I rated that 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I did not like Ray's character in book 2 as much as I did book 1. So I'm hoping that what the character's going through right now, what I've read about it, it's just a phase that they're going through and that they don't continue down that path of life. So I'm really anxious to read book 3. I was going to get to book 3 this month, but there wasn't enough time. So I'm looking forward to reading that in January. The next one that I read, which is physical, which I have right here, was The Prince of Dragons by Tamari Etherin. I rated this 4.5. I like the storyline. I'm just not a big fan of dragon storylines, but I did enjoy this one. I thought it was really cool. I might loan this to one of my cousins because I think they like reading about dragons or dragon books or anything with like the epic fantasy. So, but this one I had won in a giveaway through the author's newsletter email earlier this year, and came with like bookmarks and a bunch of other stuff. But I really enjoyed like most of this. It's just I'm not a big dragon person. So the next one that I read, which I received from Revel last year, was Miriam's Song by Jill Elaine Smith. This one I really enjoyed because this was about Miriam from the Bible, and it just talked about what her life might have been had we learned more about that through biblical scriptures and all that. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed learning about her life and learning about her connection to Moses. Moses was actually a adopted brother of Miriam's, which I found really interesting because this whole time for years I thought that they were biological siblings, when they really weren't. So I found that really fascinating and interesting to learn. So I'm looking forward to read more by Jill. I did see she writes other biblical books, mainly related to Esther and then King Solomon and just a bunch of others that are listed in the back of this book. So I'm really looking forward to reading more by Jill in the future. The next one that I read, I actually read this 2 months ago, and I really liked it. I had to quickly read it and review it for traveling page tours, so I reread it, and I still love it, which is Dolly Constantine's Hotel. It's pretty thick, as you can see. It took me a while to get through, but once I got through it, it was easy to get into. This is a mystery about somebody that is being killed at the motel. A murder occurs and they're trying to figure out who did it. It's kind of on, to me it reminded me a lot of the game of Clue and the movie Clue. So this one I really enjoyed, though. I rated it 5 stars. I'm looking forward to reading more by this author. I'm not sure if he's wrote any more books. I still have to do research on that, but I'm really looking forward to reading more by him in the future. The next one I read in November was A Lot Like Christmas by Jennifer Snow. This one I won through the TLC book club. They send out an email and then they have a giveaway of so many books, and you put like your name in, or you can put your book club's name in, and I was entered to win 5 of these. I still have them. I am going to give some, I think, as gifts this year, but I'm not really sure. But this one I really like. I rated it 5 stars. I thought it was very cute. The only thing is there was no romance in this. It was mainly a clean romance Christian Christmas book, which I really enjoyed. I wish that there were more clean romance books written, because honestly I think that that's the way that these authors should go. But I know the competition with all these other authors, certain publishers want certain books written, and if you don't write those, then the publishers drop you. So this one I really enjoyed. I hope to read more by Jennifer Snow in the future. The next one that I read was Dream On by Kirsten Geyer. This one I rated 5 stars. I thought this one was so cute. I really enjoyed it. I thought, to me, it was on the lines of like a dream fantasy, if that's like a thing, because it's basically about this dream that this girl has a boyfriend who only has 8.5 weeks to live. It didn't really say whether he was sick or not, but it did say this was a dream that the main character had. So she was trying to go through her dream to figure out like what happened. And I really enjoyed reading this because I thought that that was just so cool to try and figure out, how Henry ended up dying and all that. But yeah, I really like this one. I'm hoping to read more by this author in the future. The next one I read that I wasn't too happy with, I ended up rating it 3 stars, which I'll be donating this, is The Homewreckers by Mary Kay Andrews. I essentially thought that this one was a book based on a one of those shows where they flip a house, they remodel it, like on HGTV or DIY Network. It was kind of like this, but it also wasn't. The main characters were like arguing with each other constantly throughout the book until the middle of the book, and then it kind of tapered down. And I felt like Mary Kay didn't put her heart into this book. I feel like she rushed it by writing this, because a lot of the chapters I read, it was like repetitive of what the previous chapter had already mentioned. So I wasn't really happy with that. That's why I rated this 3 stars. This was only like the third book I've read by her. The other 2 I enjoyed more than this one, so I was really disappointed that I did not like this one. The next one I read was an ebook. All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This was my first time reading the Adeline Grace book, or books that she's written. My Bookstagram friend Madison, which I know she'll be watching this, Madison was reading Belladonna by Adeline Grace last month, and I remember she was putting in her Instagram stories like if she enjoyed parts of it or if she didn't, and then she was asking like why certain characters were doing certain things. And so I found it really interesting. I was like, I want to read an Adeline Grace book or series and see how she is as an author. So I read All the Stars and Teeth. I loved it. I rated it 5 stars. I do want to get the physical book to keep because I just loved it so much. I found it really interesting. I thought it was really cool. It was more of like a dark fantasy to me, but I still enjoyed it. I just wish there was more of a young adult aspect to it. The next one I read was Moonlight Becomes You by Mary Kay Andrews. As many of you know, Mary Higgins Clark, is a favorite mystery author of mine. I started reading her when I was 12 years old. My dad's parents, my grandparents, gave me Santa Cruz as a Christmas gift when I was 11, 12 years old. And ever since then, I've been wanting to read more of Mary Higgins Clark's books. I was really sad when she passed away last year. I didn't know she was sick or anything. But ever since then, I've been trying to get all of her books so that I have them all. But I really like this one. This one was set in Rhode Island, basically about a fashion photographer that goes to this party, and she's thrilled to be reunited with her former stepmother. But then things turn for the worst, and her stepmother is murdered by an apparent burglar who's been trying to steal her stepmother's jewels in this Victorian home. So it just goes on to say about that. The plot of this reminded me of the 1960s and 70s TV show Perry Mason. My grandparents watched it a lot. My parents watched it a lot. My mom still watches it before supper every night on MeTV. But this reminded me a lot of that show, which I really enjoyed. So I'm hoping to read more by her in the coming months. The next one I read, which was given to me through the review crew with Barbara, was Mrs. Witherspoon Goes to War. This one I rated 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. This was just about the women Air Force service pilots, and it talks about like what they had to go through back then. And a lot of the women joined because it was during the Great Depression, and a lot of the men protested not wanting to go to war because they didn't agree with what the president at the time was saying about the war in 1944. So I found that very interesting. This book also made me sad because my dad was big into learning about the Civil War, watching World War II movies and documentaries, and I know he would have enjoyed this very much if he had been here and I could talk to him about what I read. But yeah, I really like this one, and I hope to read more by Mary Davis in the future. I did rate it 5 stars on Goodreads, Instagram, and Storygraph. The next one I read was Melody Lingers On by Mary Higgins Clark. This is another one that I wanted to knock off my TBR because I'd had it for a while. This one, I liked this one. I actually thought it was better than Moonlight Becomes You. Because this was on a sailboat. They go on a Korean cruise or Caribbean cruise, and I found it fascinating, especially when the record that they put on the music box, it would not stop throughout the whole book, and I thought that was just really interesting. It was like the music box had got stuck on the song and just kept playing and playing and playing. So I rated this 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read more by her in the coming months. The next one I read was The Messy Lives of Book People by Vandra Patrick. I rated this 5 stars. This was given to me by my book club friend Logan Turner. I finally read it. Logan gifted this to me back in July for my birthday. I thought it was really interesting and cool how the main character, Liv, was a mother of 2, and she became a maid for these ritzy families in, I think it was in England. And then she meets her favorite author, and then her author mysteriously passes away, and what the author passed away with hit home for me. The author ended up passing away from pancreatitis. My dad suffered from pancreatitis in 2014, and then last year in 2021, before he essentially passed away in November of 2021. But my dad did not die from pancreatitis. But I found it interesting that they talked about that, and what they were talking about, the symptoms they were talking about, was exactly what my dad was going through when he was in the hospitals last year. And I'm glad that this book brought awareness to that, because not a lot of people know that pancreatitis is very serious. Once you have those pains, if you can't control them on your own, you need to go to the hospital. A lot of people who have digestive issues growing up, like my dad did, essentially that's how pancreatitis starts. A lot of times, this book talked about if you drink a lot of alcohol, that can cause it. That's not completely true, because my dad had gallstones that got stuck, and that's what caused his pancreatitis both times within his lifetime. He was supposed to have one more surgery done to cure his pancreatitis, but the doctor told my mom that she was not sure if my dad would survive it, so they didn't do the surgery. I kind of wish they had, because I think my dad would have survived it. He was very strong. There were things he was going through with the strokes that he had suffered after he got pancreatitis. But overall, I think my dad's stress of what was going on in his life with his siblings was what essentially caused all of his illnesses. But this book, I was really glad it touched on that issue, and I really recommend it. If you or someone you know has pancreatitis and you want to learn more about it, get nonfiction books to read up on it and what you're supposed to eat to help tamper down on the inflammation from it. And also read this, because it was very informative about it. It literally made me cry when I read about that, because all those feelings that I saw my dad go through came back. Excuse me. Okay, next one I read was The Morning After by Rochelle B. Weinstein. I rated this one 5 stars. This one was about a family who lost their teenage son in a car accident, and the younger brother starts to blame himself for it, even though it's not his fault. So it just talks about grief and all that. So if you're going through grief like I am, I really recommend it. It really helped me. It helps me to cope. Basically what I was going to say is it helps me to cope. So I really like this one, and I hope to read more by her in the future. Next one I read was The Last Goodnight by Kat Martin. This one I rated 5 stars. This was the first in a series by her. I didn't know if I'd like it, but I do. Found it really interesting, and I hope to read more by her in the future. Next one I read that I wasn't too crazy about. I was very disappointed with it. I think I rated it 2 stars. The Curse by Nancy Drew, The Curse by Nicole Osto. This one had a lot of immature high school drama, which caused me to give it a low rating. It was nothing about the mystery. There was no mystery mentioned. This was nothing like the TV show on the CW. This was nothing like the book series written by Caroline Keene. This was just a YA book about high school immaturity and drama, and I was very disappointed with it. I like the Riverdale series by this author, but her attempt to write a Nancy Drew series, I would tell her, don't even bother, because this was just bad. Next one I read was The Death of Mrs. Westway by Ruth Ware. This one touches on grief again. I rated it 5 stars. No, I rated it 4.5 because the main character, Harriet, kept complaining about her mother and how her mom was to her when Harriet was growing up. And I didn't like that. For the main part, I did like this book. It's just the complaining from Harriet was what really got me. I will be keeping this, but I hope that all the characters in the book don't complain about each other like this one did. The last one I read, which I had gotten from book influencers, they had paid me to promote their book, is Four White Roses by Judy Ann Davis. I love this one. This is about a man who's widowed now, and he returns to Pennsylvania with his daughter to sell his deceased grandmother's house. But he discovers her final request was for him to find a missing relative and a stash of World War I jewels. So this one just talks about that, and then he meets another woman who helps him with all that, and come to find out they were childhood friends and sweethearts, and so it just talks about that. I really like this. I rated it 5 stars. I thought it was really cute. I wish it was part of a series because I'd like to see where the characters would be in like today's world. So, but I really like this one. I rated it 5 stars, and I can't wait to read more by Judy in the future. Those are all the books I read for November. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing all of them and hearing my thoughts and seeing what I rated them. If you have any questions about any of the books mentioned, just let me know in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye guys!